everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sustainably You podcast. My name is Vibha, and I have with me my co-creators, Simi.
Hi, everyone.
And Philip.
Hello.
And we are talking about a very interesting topic today. We have a guest for you.
Whoopee.
His name is Daniel Solomon, and he is the founder of Eroego. So, hi Daniel, why don't you start with telling us a little bit about yourself and Eroego?
Well, can I just interrupt? First interrupt.
Yeah, of course.
First interruption. First impressions.
I love it. I love the fire, right?
First impressions is Daniel. You're tall, dark, and handsome, and
Thank
fit,
you.
and you exude vitality. So I think you are the right person for what are you doing. So please go ahead.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Philip and Simi and Vib. Thanks a lot for being a customer first of all. So my name is Daniel Solomon. I'm the founder of Eroego, the company that aims to eliminate food waste by reclaiming ugly produce in the UAE, the MENA region, and the world at a later stage. Why did I start this company? I think is because I started thinking a little bit different than how I was thinking maybe some few years ago. So I'm originally from Nigeria. I've traveled around the world, but the common theme when I travel is, I find myself really fortunate, and a lot of people are not as fortunate as I am. I've been in Dubai for almost a decade, but there's one common practice that I notice when I travel back home, or different parts of Asia is, people don't have access to a decent meal. And when I mean decent meal, it means people would always say, bro, in Nigeria, can you please give me, 10 naira to buy food? That's like equivalent of less than $1. And obviously that gets me thinking a lot, right? I was like, you don't have food? It's like, I don't have a job. The government is not doing a lot. So, I just need to be able to buy some food. And you hand out money to people, but when you think about it from the other flip side, it's just like you're always just having to hand out money to people. You're not teaching them to fish, which connected me back to my first company, which I started, which is a digital agency. I opened an office in Lagos. I had an office in Odessa in Ukraine, and we always train people on how to become programmers so they can basically upskill their skills. They could be in the gig economy, to be able to, get a job for themselves, to be able to buy food and, just care for themselves. Because civil servant job will probably pay you less than $200, $800 a month. But when you're a programmer, you're not limited. You could offer your services right from wherever you are to people in different parts of the world. And I found that really powerful. And training people was really great, but I felt like I'm not training 1 million people. I needed to do something like really big and massive. And the denominating factor was that, people don't have access to food. When I come to Dubai, you hear, a lot of food has been thrown away due to so many reasons. It could be, we use the word ugly a lot, but not just because of the ugly. Food has been wasted because, they're too small, they're too big. But because we have a lot of imports coming into the UAE, you also have excess produce due to change in demand. That's another reason where wholesalers also have produce they can't sell due to change in demand that would go to waste. Or you also have items that are near expiration. That's another reason food goes to waste. So my first thought was, I'm going to take all this food, in this rich country that we're blessed to be in, and I'm just going to send it to people in Nigeria and in the rest of Africa. And that was my first thought. Then, as you do more research, I just thought to myself, charity never works. Don't take my word for it. Don't hold this against me, but it's just like my own thinking. I feel like charity never worked, particularly in Nigeria, where there's still a level of corruption. You give to charity, is the work really being done? I mean, we're great people, we're smart, but I guess there is that dominating factor that if you don't have the infrastructure, also is a major fact. So you ship all the food. If you can't store them, you can't distribute them, they also get wasted. So as I was doing more research, I realized, wow, it's not only an inequality issue. People can have access to food. It's also an environmental issue, apart from it being a social issue. It's massive from an environmental point of view. That's the reason why I was like, okay, I really need to solve this. I'm not going to become a charity company. I'm going to use technology to connect all of these players like retailers and create something unique that would automate every produce that they have weekly or daily that would go to waste. And I need to also know in advance, so have a predictive model that tells me. And so I got to work because obviously technology was my core. I worked at Publicis Sapient and I started my own agency, so I had some resources and we started thinking about how to make this work. But obviously for you to build on any big dream, you have to start from an MVP, which is your minimum viable product. And that's why we launched Eroego at the end of last year, December, where we started working with local farmers and wholesalers to really reclaim those produce that are either ugly, too big, too small, or just excess produce that they can't sell. And we send them in a box to customers on a weekly basis, which helps reclaim that resources, carbon and water that went into making the food. We needed to find a way to, not just really solve it from an environmental point of view. I need to connect it back to why I started. So for every box we deliver every week, we feed 2 people with our friends that share the meal, the World Food Program, where we would also be sharing our quarterly reports or bi-quarterly or bi-yearly reports as we go. We're a startup. Obviously, there's a lot of waste happening in the MENA region, but it's also great to see a lot of initiatives that have been launched and it's now a priority to reclaim food. And it's only the beginning, and that's one of the reasons why I love Dubai or the UAE. Is like anything that needs to be solved, it's not just solved for the UAE, but it's that thinking global. And I think it's good for us to be in that particular space, to be able to be reclaiming, eliminating food waste, to preserve the planet. I think that's really an important task that we have at hand.
I just want to dig into your mind a bit more.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. We have a pre-decided agenda, but I just want to go off track a bit. So you mentioned how you look at produce that are ugly and not good looking and so on. Yeah, I don't want to say it's the story of my life, but it's just, but I mean I can relate to being sidelined or being taken for granted, and so that helps me to think of waste and value in things that are discarded, right? So what made you think that there is value in that in those produce that are not presentable? Or
I think I see why you asked the question. I think that the value is maybe the way I was raised. It's if the tomatoes has a blemish at the top, you're supposed to cut it off and you use the tomatoes, right? Or you have a peanut in a box and you're supposed to cut, check, smell, feel, you're connected to it to know if it's off. You're not being told by the labels, right? So that automatically just creates this sense of value for things that you're not supposed to just toss them away because they're not who defined what those perfection is. I guess you also have the regulatory framework that ensures that people are not just eating anything. But at the end of the day, it's supposed to guide people who cannot tell those difference. We got to a point where we're so comfortable and there's a lot of convenience that we're not so connected. And I think that that's why when I hear this has been wasted, or when you see a brunch, you're like, there's a lot of value in this. Why can't you just send this food to somebody, right? So you think about it, and that's the first thought, obviously. Then you have to do research. I had to do research on this. Oh, I understand why food can be sent. There's hygiene, there's this. So what are the ways that you could actually use to ensure that the quality of that food is still preserved when it gets to the end user? Because the end users life is still the most important thing, right? And there are a lot of technologies, there are a lot of like simple steps that we could take to ensure that we don't food loss, we don't lose those food before it actually goes to waste. Okay.
So two of the principles that is at the heart of our podcast is zero waste and circular economy. And so when those two principles converge, that'll be the optimum state of living. So that's what drew us to your company, because you imbibe those principles. And what people consider waste, you see value in it, and then you're trying to repurpose that. What would normally be wasted, you're creating value in those things. And then now you're using technology to make it available to those who need those things, because one man's waste is another man's treasure, so to speak.
Yeah, I think I probably would look at it like a very insightful question, but I would look at it a bit very different. It's like individuals are not only the culprits, like individuals have always been, well, I don't want to waste stuff, at least most individuals. But we all know the power of marketing. For instance, buy one, get one free is a key driver. So people start buying things they don't need and they can't finish. So this basically, it drives a lot of waste too. So if you look at the individual waste, yes, there's a lot of waste that happens at home. But before we talk about that, we need to talk about the waste that occurs due to the behavioral change that happens by marketers or companies. Marketing, you buy this cheese, you buy one, you get one free, you do this. So I'm having to buy things that I don't need because I'm thinking I can store them away, but those things probably will go to waste, right? And if I also go to the store and there's all these deals, I didn't make my own list, then I'm going to get drawn to them. So I take those produce home and they end up going to waste, amongst other reasons why that happens. But then you go to also the broken food system. It's broken in the sense that, most supermarkets, they're looking for perfect produce. So they reject items that maybe are not maybe 6 inches. Maybe a cucumber is not 6 inches, or it's not just even about the shape, right? Most times, there's a lot of reasons for those, because I don't want to use just the word ugly, because you have items that are also too small, or then they're too big, that can also be sold. They most times do not reach the supermarket. That's one aspect of it. And this obviously contributes to the waste. And before this too, the processor, who is processing most of the food, are using a lot of machines to process food, and those machines are designed to process maybe a size of a produce. So most times, if the produce comes out when you plant it bigger than what the machine can process, it tosses it to the side, right? So you could see how those lead to. So we see how those lead to steps all lead to this broken food system that leads to a lot of waste. So it starts with the food producers, the people requesting it, like the supermarket, and then obviously the marketers. And then you could talk about so many other reasons, but there's just so many reasons why food is being wasted. But to change this, you need a lot of education, and you need a lot of behavioral change. Like when I go into the supermarket, I'm more drawn to my value for my money. I want that mango to be the prettiest, right? Or the biggest, or in a certain way that I think, right? I don't just be it's mango, as long as it tastes good, perfectly good food, I'm going to eat those mangoes. And lastly, you need more processing. So items normally that after being produced that can hit the shelf or change in demand, you need to be able to process them into other kinds of fruits that can last longer. And you need infrastructures to be put in place to make that happen.
One more question. So you might remember, or you probably know the statistic better than me, and you can correct me. I believe it's 30 to 50% of food is wasted. So that is a huge problem, but that's also, you're looking at it as a huge opportunity, right?
Yeah, it's $1 billion opportunity if you want to look at it from there. It's 40%, 30 to 40% of every food produced is lost or wasted even before it reaches the consumer. So this is a massive issue, and it's a billionaire value that comes with that food. If you want to look at it just from cost point of view, so a farmer who can sell an item that he spent a lot of energy to grow, just because they're too big or too small, he's losing a lot of money, right? The customer will probably not mind buying something that's a bit odd shape if it's going to be cheaper than the regular price. So you could see how, from an economical point of view, food waste is an economical issue, but also when we want to go beyond the financial, for every fruits and veg or food that is being wasted, there is the resources that went into making the food. There's the water, there's the human power, and when it lands in the landfill, then there's carbon that's been emitted with the greenhouse gas emission that obviously occur. And that's why the whole issue with food waste is very important, because the total food that is being wasted, it's equivalent to the 87% of the global road transportation emission. So without having to talk about statistics, it's just to really picture how big the issue is, that if we can solve this food waste, we can actually be in a position to really reclaim, or stop emitting a lot of greenhouse gas emission in the world that's actually safer, right? So there's a lot of aspects to food waste. And most importantly, I think it's a brilliant opportunity to increase value for farmers, for food producers, for individuals, and it's a triple win for everybody who is involved. And at the end of the day, we preserve the planet smiles.
I think, I wanted to ask this question, not ask, but I wanted the listener to hear a little bit about Daniel before, and then
Are we allowed to say tall, dark, handsome?
No, you said that.
I think we are allowed to say it.
You are allowed.
Not you.
Okay, sorry.
He is as well. He is allowed. No, but then Philip hijacked the whole question line, and then I had to keep it in the back.
Too much coffee.
I think, Daniel, the customers should, I don't know why am I saying customers, but the viewers, or not even the viewers, the listeners should be able to visualize who this Daniel is, because he's not just handsome, good-looking, tall guy, but also he's quite young. There's a lot of young people coming out of college school who would love to hear. So you said this is not your first startup, so you also had a business before. I mean, so how old are you? Like, what's your mindset? Just small word. We do not want to get away from the topic, but I think young people, young, old parents, they would like to know the Daniel.
I mean, I'm a regular guy, and you guys have painted me like some.
You've just been modest.
But, no, I think I'm a regular guy. I really just believe in one thing: is we need to have that mindset that reach out and is connected as a chain. We as humans, so we're not ever should be in silos, right?
So you said you just came out of university. No. You just finished your master's.
No,
so
not
you want
yet.
to? I would like to hear.
3 years ago.
Exactly.
Not 3 years ago.
What did you study by then?
So my first degree was Java technology. Second degree was information technology, and my MBA from Liverpool was finance general studies. So I would say I'm 33 years of age. I think that's not young.
It is young. With so much of information and learning coming out of you, that's to have gone and done 2 startups and stuff. I think that's a small story worth hearing too.
Well, I feel really honored for you to say that, so thank you.
Okay. Come on.
Continue, don't be shy.
Tell us. So, how did you start your first startup? Were you still studying when you started?
No, so school has been done like long time ago. I think, I used to think I love academics, but when you get into the real world, you realize that the real world is very different. You have to really apply yourself and not just what you've studied. So those are donkey years ago. Like I finished my MBA in 2017, I think.
That's not donkey years. So 2017 was just next year. Ask me.
I can't remember.
It's COVID. It makes us feel like long ago.
That's like 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah, it's
6 years.
We're in 2022.
2017.
22.
Yeah, 22. So
Yeah.
5 years.
So 5 years. It's
Yeah.
a long time ago. Like, so I don't even consider.
He's running in a different time and space.
Timeline.
Yeah, sorry.
than us.
So we lost 2 years because
Yeah,
of
for
COVID.
him,
So
the
it's only 3.
2 years is big deal. There's so
Yeah.
much to achieve for him.
It's what I'm trying to say is that what we take out from college are very important. The base is really good, and I think as young people like myself, it's like, what more can we do that it's not just like the theoretical stuff? Obviously, we have to apply ourselves, and for me, I think that was one thing: the hustle, the hungriness to really do something. I started my first job at Publicis Sapient. I think I said this earlier. And then I went, as a project manager, I went to another company to become a project director using augmented reality because I'm fascinated by technology. And I realized that it's not the metaverse yet. I mean, metaverse is a word now. And then I went on to start my first digital agency, which serves Publicis Sapient is a client amongst other clients. So just to see how the story kind of connected in terms of like where I started from, which I ran for about 5 years. And in that process, I said to myself, that was the story of why I started. I was training people, but I needed to do something a lot more that it's bigger than just, having this lifestyle business that you're having a good life. An agency is a lifestyle business, it's a good life. Yeah. I needed to do something for people, for myself, for the planet. I need to build the future that I imagined, and not just for myself, but also for the generations to come. Obviously, there's been a lot of challenges in those particular journey, and the journey is still beginning, and there will be more challenges. But I think that's the mindset to know that, okay, I've set my mind to do something, and this is something I'm gonna do.
So what I'm hearing is optimism and very long-term thinking, and so those are really important.
Yeah.
Were you always like that, or
always like
just
that?
Picked it up suddenly?
You have to be a builder, right? Different types of people. I think people would say, I look at things very long term, and you have to be long term because things do happen. There's a lot of change that happened. We never expect COVID. It did happen, so we have to be able to reinvent ourselves. We have to be able to rethink and have that growth mindset. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah. You said you traveled in many parts of the world, and you were in Lagos and then Ukraine and other parts of the world. How did you end up in a obscure place like Dubai?
I wouldn't call Dubai obscure.
I'm just kidding.
I would be like, it's the most
it's not.
beautiful
Everybody
city
knows, but
in the world. But
yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that you aspire. My sister is like, oh, you go to Dubai, you transfer there, Middlesex. I was like, you go there, and your last year, I was like, because I wanted to have this first class in uni. But those are long times ago. You're taking me really, really, really back. So, and that's it,
Yeah.
So came here to study, start, and build a career here, and it's been called home for almost a decade.
So Dubai is a good place to do what you're doing because Dubai has the humanitarian city. Dubai sends out food, for the UN to many parts of the world when there's crises. The UAE has ministers appointed for climate change and for food security and so on. Did any of those aspects help you in your business?
I think if you look at the landscape of things, when we talk about food waste today, the most talked about topic, and the government is also actively working to basically resolve food waste, is the UAE government, which is really something remarkable. So there's a new initiative, probably you heard about it, the NEMA project, which if you Google about it, is about food waste and food loss. It's really something awesome. And you're going to continue to see more initiatives like that, I believe so, because there's a goal to achieve, zero waste very soon. And we're talking about, especially when the world is going to get, by 2050, the population might really increase. To promote food security, you also have to address food waste.
So I can really relate to everything that you're saying, when you go back home, and I think all of us coming from India can relate to the fact that we have we take so many things for granted over here, and you have people over there who are starving, who don't have food to eat. And I didn't realize about this until I actually saw the ad of your business about we're so busy in life, we can't think about everything, that all these small things that are possibly happening. And it's so great to have someone like you who noticed this and, set out to kind of solve this problem. And what I want to know is that, as a society, we seem to be obsessed with looks, right? Whether that's animals or food or people. And do you think that because now a lot of people are shopping online, groceries and everything, do you think grocers become even more selective about the produce that they're sending us? Because what happens is, and I order from other groceries as well, like Gibson's, and I see the food always looks amazing. And that kind of reinforces me, because I'm not going out to the supermarket anymore and selecting food based on, this is cheaper, although they look a little bit, these tomatoes are not super red or juicy, but I'm still going to buy them because they're cheaper. So I'm not doing that anymore.
So the marketing is saying that if the tomato looks nice and red, it's nutritious.
Yes.
So looks mean nutritious.
Exactly.
So what Daniel is saying is, no, not necessarily.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But do you feel all of this online shopping is leading to more waste? Because grocers want to make you believe that even though you're not selecting the produce yourself, they will give you the best and the freshest.
That's a very interesting question, and it gets me thinking. I think along those lines, obviously, because you're not in store, the consumer behavior is changing. As the consumer behavior is changing, yes, most times I would say as you accelerate and we're going online and the e-grocery space is growing, yes, the producers or those people who are delivering to you, the companies will want to give you the best produce that is available because they demand or they think that's what you really need. So it could accelerate the problem, right? Because then, I believe that more groceries would also start thinking along those lines, because our mission is to really change behaviors, work with even the grocery providers locally that are already here, to also take some items that they can't sell and sell it for them to our own audience. So because the whole idea is to ensure that food doesn't go to waste, right? So there's no point in creating that kind of barrier to say, okay, you're a perfect food seller, now you can do ugly food produce. I think that the mission has to overshadow the whole competition in terms of the way you might want to look at it. So it's to change the behavior, both from the businesses, the individuals, and I think that would also augment every other change that we demand in the society.
So Daniel, how does this mechanism work? So how does your business work in getting the produce and taking it to the end customer? What's the process? Where does the food come from? How is it processed? How does it reach the end customer?
So today we're doing fruits and vegetables. It's a simple 3 steps, but before that is to fight food waste. What we're doing is promote seasonality and farm to fork as much as possible. Obviously, we have to also reclaim items that are imported, that are already in the market. So we're not importers. We only just take things that wholesalers are selling. And when we get those produce, when they say, I'm having X number of items that I can't sell due to change in demand, or I have ugly produce that I can't sell, we take those, produce, it's delivered to us, and then we do the quality check. It's packed into a box, curated. We create recipes to accompany those particular items, and every week on the subscription box, direct to customer, we send them direct to customers on the subscription model. And each week you have different varieties because you have different things you're rescuing. And users are also engaged because the community, they're able to be involved in letting us know, okay, this didn't work this week. Okay, what can we do? And it's part of also the education to create those recipes to to encourage people to be able to cook with those items or what to do with those particular produce. And you're a customer, so
Yes.
you know this more than I do. So
Yes.
No, I was more interested from how does it work at the back end,
Yes.
not from the customer's point.
True.
So that brings me to the next question. So I have heard Vibha saying, oh, the products look so, and she did mention before as well to you, it looks quite fresh. So in my mind, the first question was, okay, if it's an ugly produce, that means either it's towards getting ripe, or it's supposed to, you need to, it's soon it's going to get finished, or there's something wrong with how it looks. Or how do you define ugly?
So ugly is a fad word that's used for vegetables, but I think it's a good way to educate customers, because you have ugly is what we call the ugly problems: too big, too small, too wonky, too odd, too many of them. So you can have too many carrots that's been produced, and then you also have other issues like near expiration. And then you also have issues that are like people changing demand, right? So those are like the problems that the ugly comes with, right? But really, if you look at the landscape of things today, is we believe every food produced should be eaten, especially if they're perfectly good food. And the reason why they could produce fresh most of the time is because that you promote seasonality. So when you promote seasonality, it means that they've been stored less. It means they're either coming from a local farm, or even though they're being imported, it's still in season. So those particular produce obviously is a little bit fresher. They've not been stored for a long period of time. But with startup, there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of challenges, and we've been tasked to do this particular job of really eliminating food waste, and I think it's only the beginning.
Yeah. So when you talk about upcycling food waste, right, there are already things within the clothing industry where you're upcycling used clothes and things like that. So do you think there is misconception when you talk about upcycling food waste in this way?
How would you define upcycling? Because I want to make sure that I'm using the right word.
Good one, Daniel.
Yeah, he loves definitions and etymologies. Yeah, so basically upcycling would be something that I feel is going to waste, and you are making a use out of something that would have been otherwise wasted or discarded.
This is probably why there is good definition between food waste and food loss.
Yes.
I think that the misconception between those two really help, like people always mix those two before. We need to be able to distinguish between an item that is perfectly good food, is still at the top of the chain, is not gotten to the level where, okay, it's a food, but is moldy, and then it needs to be discarded and used for another value, like decomposing.
Yes.
Decomposting. Okay.
Right, for instance, right? So what we're doing is, from the funnel, it's like the farmer farms, he believes that all of his produce should be eaten. We basically promote that. As you have more farmers, you're going to be able to work directly with them to promote that, because you're getting produce directly from them. This is fresh, and then it goes directly to users. They're able to eat fresh, good food, regardless of the size, shape, how many of them, is to be able to collect them from those produce. If there are lots of them, you might start thinking about, okay, taking some of them to processing so you could turn them into paste. So those are jams, sauces. So there's so many things that you could do with those particular produce. And then once they've gotten to that stage where they can't be eaten anymore, or you need to start thinking, what's the new value? Like people using orange peels to make clothes, right? And decomposting, so there's so many other things that you could do. So I think that That's the two difference.
Yes.
And so I wouldn't call it like upcycling, because I think that's the end of the funnel, where you need to still find value with those items that are moldy, or the shaft that you get from every food that's been produced. They could make good soil. There's a beautiful startup called the Waste Lab, who are currently decomposting, as an example, which is really great, right? So, yeah.
I love how this is a very intellectual activity. So you're looking at every stage of a produce, and as it's going from green to fully ripe and wasted, you're looking at every stage and saying, how can I use this? What's the value at this stage, right?
What we were talking about is, how there are sometimes surprises in the box, because at this point we are not selecting exactly what we want. The box comes, and then I think 3 or 4 days before we can see what's going to come in the box to us. Yeah. So it has been kind of like a journey for me, like experimenting with things. I found a lot of different veggies that were not before part of my diet, but I was very interested on like how to use them, especially because he also sends recipes.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So there are recipes that come in the box, and then if you've never used it before, you can kind of figure out how to do that. But that's what I really like, because to be a part of your customer, you have to have that open-mindedness, the mindset that I want to do this. And obviously, if I'm getting that produce to my house, it has to be used because it's for a certain cause.
Let me tell you about this customer, okay? she's pregnant.
Wow,
I'm expecting.
Yeah. So
thank you.
Congrats.
So I'm just trying to give you some ideas for your business, maybe. So what else are you? I mean, you got some health issues, right? You're very specific about foods.
I have celiac disease.
Okay.
So I cannot eat.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. It's
one
okay.
good news, one bad news.
Yeah.
It's
One
okay.
good news. So I cannot eat certain things, but I can eat all vegetables and fruits. So
okay.
He doesn't have to worry about that.
No, yeah. I think what you're saying is very key, right? It's apart from like the choice, flexibility is very important. Choice is very important. Though we promote seasonality, excess produce, it's still very important, the choice. They're just not just because some things we like, and also due to allergies, right? So, and that's why, in the concept and what we're doing is to also allow users to have that flexibility to be able to exclude items from their box once you log in. I'm not sure if you've used the service yourself.
I have.
Okay.
I have.
To exclude items that each week that you're already notified, so items that are coming, so you could go ahead and remove items that you don't want and ask to be replaced with something else. I think that helps to give you that flexibility due to allergies or some things that you can't really eat, right? And then this helps give you that, okay, if I'm allergic to something, I don't have to eat it. And if also, like you described, like there's some items that you typically wouldn't eat, and maybe you're tired of them because we don't send the same thing every week, but let's just say you never eat. Let's take leeks.
Yeah.
For instance, that was
haters of leeks.
Yeah.
Unite.
And you have other thousands of other people who love leeks, right? Who always request leeks. So for you, you could always take it out, and others will be like, okay, I want it, right? And I think, the more we progress, the more you still be able to take more range of items. But you might be wondering, why do we not have like all produce? Because it goes against what it is that we're trying to also save, right? We're not another grocery platform. We're working to work with seasonality and produce that normally are available.
Just one last thing I wanted to mention, because you talked about seasonality a lot. And, in the olden days, and I'm talking about my parents and what they talk about is they used to eat fruit and veg only when it was seasonally available.
Yeah.
Like carrots were available in the winters, mangoes in the summers. And when you consume food that way, you're actually healthier.
Yeah.
You know, your body is more attuned with the weather, the seasons, what have you. So actually, we don't realize it, but it's really beneficial for us.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Daniel, just to wrap this up, if you can tell us, what is your company name again? What do you do? And how can people reach you?
Well, I'm Daniel Solomon, founder of Eroego, the company that eliminates food waste. We say one carrot at a time.
Love it.
And please join us.
Why the carrot?
It starts with a carrot, right? It always starts with a carrot. And we're direct to customer platform. You can subscribe, pick a box that fits your need, whether you're an individual, couple, 3 or a family. You can find a box that basically fits you. And you could always reach out to us on Instagram, Eroego, Mina, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Great. Do you also cater to hospitals and hotels or restaurants, or you're only doing families?
So we're basically working with some B2B clients, but today our main focus is the B2C side, but more to come.
Yeah, that's great. That's great to hear. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning into this episode. You can find us wherever you listen to your podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Sustainably You Podcast, and we will see you again next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And thanks,
Bye-bye.
Daniel.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Daniel.
Yeah.